Either you can check whether it's live.
Yes, Father, it's live already. I'll just put a thumbnail and other things.
Okay. Theologian, welcome. We are just waiting for.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me,
Yeah,
Jayaraj?
very much. So just waiting for the resource person to log in.
Yeah, sure.
Good morning.
So welcome, Professor Léocadie Lushombo.
You?
So how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine. Glad to see you.
Mhm.
Yes. I will make you call. So good morning, everyone. I hope everybody could hear me.
Yes.
Yes, Father.
So it's 9 o'clock, so we start, and we are glad that our resource person, Professor Léocadie Lushombo, also is here. So good morning and good evening to Professor. A very warm welcome to each one of you joining us today. We are delighted to have Professor Léocadie Lushombo, our resource person and speaker, and JD President, Dr. Theologian, and you all participants with us for what I promise a deeply enriching session. So to introduce myself, I am Jayaraj, Jesuit of Andhra Province and a systematic theologian at Jnana Deepa. And today I have the privilege of serving as the moderator for this webinar. So therefore, on behalf of Jnana Deepa, Pontifical Athenaeum, and the Jayaraju Centre for Humanities and AI, I'm truly delighted to welcome you to this very special session with Professor Léocadie Lushombo on the topic Magnifica Humanitas, Human Flourishing in the Age of AI. So we gather today at the remarkable time in history, a time where questions of faith, ethics, technology, and human dignity have never been more urgent. So in this context, I welcome you to a conversation that goes to the very heart of what it means to be human in the age of artificial intelligence. Before we dive into the sessions, I invite our president of Jnana Deepa, Pontifical Athenaeum, Dr. Dolachin Kolareth, to grace us with his welcoming words and set the tone for the webinar. Unmute.
Thank you for the Jayaraj. For the Jayaraj has already welcomed all of us, but for the sake of formality, good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this webinar. On behalf of Jnana Deepa, Jnana Deepa is a Pontifical Athenaeum of Philosophy and Theology. We have around 700 students doing all three cycles, baccalaureate, licentiate, and doctorate. So this webinar is being organized by the Jnana Deepa Centre for Humanities and Artificial Intelligence. And as the center's name indicates, we are concerned about this issue, not merely the disruption that the new technology has caused in the field of academics, but its implications for the society, its implications for understanding human person, and so on. And so this webinar is a very, very timely intervention for our collective thinking. So I extend a very, very special welcome to our distinguished speaker, Professor Léocadie Lushombo, Associate Professor at the JST Berkeley, part of the Santa Clara University. Your presence is very, very valuable for us, and we believe that the conversation that we have this morning will help us reflect further on these key issues and how do we become more discerning persons in an age of AI, and how do we uphold human dignity from the point of view of our faith. So thank you so much for joining us. I also warmly welcome our faculty members, researchers, students, religious, and all participants who have joined us this morning. So this webinar is happening also in the year of our centenary. Jnana Deepa is celebrating its 100 years of degree granting status. So it's a very joyful occasion for all of us. So thank you all for joining us. I also would like to acknowledge and thank Father Jayaraju, who is the director of the Jnana Deepa Centre for Humanities and Artificial Intelligence, and his team for organizing this timely and significant seminar. With these words, I once again welcome each one of you and wish you an enriching and thought-provoking session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dolachin, for those welcoming words. And we are truly grateful for your presence and your guidance. And I also noticed our President for South Asia is also present on the webinar, and Father Stanley D'Souza. So we'll also welcome him to the session. And now we move to the heart of today's session. So Professor Lushombo, I think allow me to introduce you to the participants. So it's my privilege to introduce you today, a scholar, a theologian, a global voice for justice whose work transcends the walls of academia. So Professor Léocadie Lushombo, as a Theresian sister, is Associate Professor of Theological Ethics at the Jesuit School of Theology of Santa Clara University, as it was said. Born in Democratic Republic of the Congo, she brings a truly global lens to her work. holding 5 advanced degrees spanning theological ethics, sacred theology, sustainable development and economics, earned from institutions across the United States. Also from various institutes across Spain and Cameroon too. Her scholarship sits at the powerful intersection of Catholic social teaching, African Christian ethics, feminist theology, liberation theology, and the ethics of nonviolence, fields she has spent decades not only studying, but living. Before entering the academy, she served for over a decade with NGOs across Central Africa and Latin America, working for justice, peace, and gender issues on the ground. Her impact reaches the highest levels of global institutional life. For that, in 2024, she was appointed by the Vatican Synod of Bishops to a key study group on poverty and environmental justice. In 2026, she was appointed to the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development. And just weeks ago, if you noticed, she was one of the only 6 invited voices at the launch of the Pope's historical encyclical, Magnifica Humanitas, on which we are talking today, where she spoke on the profound implications of artificial intelligence for the global South. She's also author and co-editor of 3 books, and her writings appear in leading theological and ethics journals worldwide. So today she brings to us, all of us, all that wisdom and rigor. And obviously, I have seen her there at the college, so a prophetic courage to all of us. So therefore, dear participants, please join me in welcoming Professor Léocadie Lushombo. And dear Professor, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, thank you. I'm very honored to be with you today, I must say, and so this is a great opportunity to, discuss with you. So it's really my honor. Thank you for inviting me. So we decided to look at Magnifica Humanitas from, human flourishing perspective, and I would like to underline the first thing is, Pope Leo XIV, poses the question. And it's a right question. What does it mean to be human in the age of artificial intelligence? So I think this is a main underlying question behind the encyclical. So the answers, provide and deepen our understanding of Christian theological anthropology and urge us to discern its implication for human flourishing. As you know, there is a lot in the encyclical. It's not only about AI, but it's about the human person. So Magnifica Humanitas is a wonderful summary of social teaching. This is, if you have read it, you can tell, right? It starts with a summary of Catholic social teaching all the way back to Pope Leo XIII. And it's unfold, right? The root of Christian theological anthropology, including the idea that human beings are finite, right? Embodied creature who reflect the relational community of the Trinity. So it reminds us what it means to be embodied persons in the face of the challenges of our time, which is the challenges of the era of artificial intelligence. And it says, I quote Pope Leo, "It is individual that matter. Each and every person, together with their families, social movement, communal ideologies, and grand political proclamation in favor of a population are worthless unless they lead to flourishing of persons, men and women, with their inalienable rights." And this is quoted in the paragraph 58. And I would like to tell you that this is almost the only time where Pope Leo mentioned the concept flourishing of persons. And so this is a unique time, literally mentioned using this concept. However, the entire encyclical is on safeguarding the human person in the time of artificial intelligence. So it's about really safeguarding human dignity which requires meeting the basic conditions for human flourishing, requiring basic conditions of human flourishing. So what Magnifica Humanitas does, it's expanding on what Christian theology, especially as we draw in Thomas Aquinas, has called the basic condition of human flourishing. If you remember your class on Thomas Aquinas, and he has all this hierarchy of the good that we need to flourish in society, right? So we need the life and the preserving life, So we are human being, we are creature, and we have inclination to procreation, inclination to nurturement. We need knowledge, it's another good that is very important for human flourishing. We need social life because we are social beings, right? So we need also to conduct ourselves according to rationality, according to reason. So the main underlying idea for this extension is that a human person undergoes experiences, right, in history and intercultural settings, right? The human person possesses a body, right, feels joy and pain, right? A human person matures through relationship through which she or he comes to know what love is, right? Through which he comes or she comes to work or she comes to entertain friendship or responsibility, right? And finally, act accordingly. And other conditions for human basic flourishing, as Thomas Aquinas will underline, is justice, seeking the common good, right? And many theologians have expanded to that. And Magnifica Humanitas is literally expanding on those conditions for human flourishing. So the first way it does that, right, it's affirming and reminding us that humaneness, it's imperative. Preserving our humanity, it's imperative. And it's a God-given power, and it's a gift, right? So humaneness cannot be made up in computational mode, right? Because it's enhanced in history, culture, and context, right? It is embodied and experienced through emotions, pains, sorrow, but also through joy, hope, and wonder. So a human person has a moral conscience because she can judge good and evil. I relate it here, this is it's very much easily to read Magnifica Humanitas from a Lonergan perspective. And Lonergan reminds us the concept of self-appropriation, where he put the concept of experiencing, understanding, right? And here, understanding, Pope Leo is calling this grasping the ultimate meaning of situations, right? So that is who humans are, right? That is the way we function, right? So we have to grasp the ultimate meaning of situation. And Bernard Lonergan continue, right? He's a structure of conditional structure. Beside experiencing, understanding, he talked about judging and deciding, or else being attentive, reasonable, intelligent, and bearing responsibility for consequences. And you read Magnifica Humanitas on paragraph 99, you can see that structure, right, underlined very clearly. And the Magnifica Humanitas is reminding us that no one becomes responsible without judging well. No one becomes responsible without understanding and even undergoing experiences in life, all sorts of experiences of joy and pain, gladness and sorrow, hope, and even despair, right? No one becomes responsible without actually experiencing the limit, right? The finitude of the human being, right? So for this reason, you have Magnifica Humanitas claiming that artificial intelligence, it may imitate language, right? behavior. If you don't mind, I will share this, right? This paragraph. So Magnifica Humanitas may imitate language, behavior, and or even simulate empathy and understanding, but they do not understand what they produce, for they lack the affective, relational, and the spiritual perspective through which human beings grow in wisdom, right? Even when these tools are described as capable of learning, the way of doing so is different from that of the human person. And it is not the experience of those who allow themselves to be shaped by life and grow over time, through choices, mistakes, forgiveness, and fidelity. Rather, it's a form of statistical adaptation based on data and feedback, which can be very effective, but does not imply inner goal. So this is a very important claim, Magnifica Humanitas. Just let me stop sharing. Okay. So we have, and then a person grows, right? A person grows and learns through experiences and the many limitations of life. So the progress that surpasses the human condition is conveyed by, transhumanism and posthumanism. So you have Magnifica Humanitas as well, right? Underlining posthumanism and transhumanism in the digital age, and even claiming this is all illusory because a human being is a person who actually embodied limitations, right? So Magnifica Humanitas renews Thomas Aquinas' statement again that person signifies what is most perfect in all nature, and that is the sense of magnificent humanity, right? Person, embodied what is most perfect in all nature, that is a substance individual of a rational nature, and renews the claim of dignita infinita about what it means to be rational, right? Dignitas infinita already reminded us on number 9 that the capacities of knowing and understanding, as well as those of wanting, loving, choosing, and desiring, it also included all corporal functions closely related to these abilities. So Dignitas Infinitas was already telling us that the magnificence of a human person is not only rationality, right? So it's also relationality. So that Magnifica Humanitas strongly emphasized the relational and social nature of persons. And this is very much grounded in the Trinitarian dynamic of love received and shared by God, right? So how do you get that? Through computational process, right? So Christian theological anthropology has already taught us that human development is possible only when considering what counts as fundamental to human flourishing. And if you recall, those who studied or read Steve Pope, who's a theologian at Boston College, he argued that human flourishing can be found only to the extent that our evolved social, affective, and cognitive capacity are trained in ways that accord with our intrinsic dignity. End of quote. So the intrinsic dignity is being underlined very strongly by a Magnifica Humanitas. And Pope Leo XIV highlights other, right, concerns regarding the influence of artificial intelligence on our life, right? And these concerns, I'm arguing, you can see how these concerns are expanding on what we call the basic conditions of human flourishing. So in the age of artificial intelligence, the first concern is about how do we preserve the capacity of the mind to know, right? Or the capacity of the mind to attain the truth. You know, how do we get to the truth? And Magnifica Humanitas, caution that the very condition of for human, right, cognition, or the very structure of human knowing, which again, Bernard Lonergan has already mapped as consciousness, right? Or what also he calls self-appropriation, right? Which is again experiencing, understanding, judging, and deciding, that this structure is facilitated by, our ability as a human being, to desire to know, right? And ask questions, right? And these questions are not restricted. So our ability to wonder as a human being, that is the way we function, right? So these questions are not restricted. In this sense, artificial intelligence, even when it's sophisticated, Pope Leo is saying, is fundamentally different, from what human beings are both, epistemologically speaking, and even ontologically speaking, right? So the way our cognition, structurally function in terms of knowing and wonder, right? It's already different from the way a machine, can perform. So Pope Leo reminds us that machine ought not to replace our responsibility to apprehend truth, right? According to our one intellectual agency, right? Which remain essential to human flourishing. And he says that we lose our ability to collaborate creatively with one another, right? When we offload our personal responsibility for making judgment, right? Making judgment, or our responsibility to understanding, our responsibility to ask further questions, so to process questions into a machine, right? So we must find the truth in ourselves, because what do we do with artificial intelligence, right? So we give to artificial intelligence questions, and then we expect the answer, right? So we don't go through the processes, So, and we must find the truth in ourselves and in relation to others, grow. That is the way we grow in consciousness of who we truly are, So you have Pope Leo saying this on paragraph 132. Right? And the second aspect concern that he mentioned that regard human flourishing, it's the fact that, not only we have this ability to know the truth as a human being, right? In processing, in asking questions, in wondering, so the wonder, but at the same time, truth is relational, right? So truth is not just something that I can get into data and put in my mind, right? Truth, it's relational. And here you underline on the number 132 that data, fact, are subject to the verification, cross-checking of sources, and responsible argumentation, right? So knowledge, right, he says, Pope Leo, on the same paragraph, is deeply relational, for it is built through bond of trust and shared practices, as well as an honest exchange with others with the word, end of quote. And a point that was made again by Lonergan here, right? He says that human knowledge then is not some individual possession, right? It's not some kind of data. So data are not knowledge. Human knowledge is not something that it's outside there. Human knowledge is growing from within, right? And that is where we grow in consciousness, right? And human knowledge is a common fund, right? From which each may draw by believing, to which each may contribute, right? In the measure that he perform his cognitional operation properly and report the result accurately. So, and he noted that scientific collaboration required trust, right? So knowledge is fundamentally communal, right? Because it's fundamentally rooted in our trust of one another and our openness to dialogue. So the social and the relational nature of consciousness and learning is enhanced by diverse historical experience that we have, is enhanced by our human, relation, the emotions we go through in life, the joys, the sorrows, right? That is where we grow in consciousness, And the knowledge grows with our families. I mean, our loved one. It grows in our, multicultural expression, right? Including what we experience daily in our culture. That is where we get to be who we are, right? It arises out of the problems, of the people, and here it's very important for the global South to remind our global South saint like Oscar Romero, right? Who here already said that it's the poor, right? The experience of the poor, right? That we have in our countries, in our experience, that very deep experience of the humanizing conditions in which poor people live in, right? And he said, it is the poor who tell us what the word is, right? That teaches you a lot, right? By contacting, by relating to the poor, right? Oscar Romero said, because that is the way the church services to the world should be, right? Like relating to the poor. That is the way the church learned. And it's also knowledge also arises through living the gospel, right? So the poor and living the gospel raise our consciousness that those who are devoid of human faces are to recover humaneness, because they too, like all of us, are embodiment of magnificent humanity, right? That God put it embodied in us, that is intrinsic, right? So human flourishing, therefore, is enhanced through genuine new framework that emerge from embodied intercultural and intercontextual relationship, which will hardly be met through artificial intelligence. And the Pope Leo is really being clear about this, right? So what we have today with artificial intelligence, it can be called atomization of learning, right? Which is, I go to AI every time that I need to learn. One of our colleagues even said, even in a relationship between, married couple, what they are experiencing today is, when you need to ask something, even when you ask your husband or your wife, you are not really satisfied with the answer, right? So after your wife and the husband responded, you still go to AI, to make sure that that is it, right? So this is atomization of learning, right? But that is killing that relationship, that ability to learn from one another and process, right? In growing in consciousness. And this is a treat, to human flourishing, because we learn best, we flourish best when we are loved and when we are encouraged to be confident, right, in our abilities, right? And that goes through relationship, and we learn better, we flourish when we actually, actualize our cognitive capacity. And through this goes through love of others, right? It's not about taking data into my mind, right? So the tradition that enhance human connectedness are necessary for human flourishing, and we can illustrate, with many communal culture that we know, right? So especially from Africa, we have the Ubuntu philosophy, and this doesn't mean that it's lived, right? Not necessarily, right? But at least it is a value that is being promoted, right? And that is enhancing our relational, social nature. And this Ubuntu, it says I am because I belong, right? I participate, I share, right? And it's an anthropological vision that resonates deeply with the communal culture of, some of the Asian countries, right? That you know better, right? Resonate very deeply with, also they called Vanua in Fiji. So this is not only an African feature, so you find it in different continents, right? And the Pope Leo is saying these are part of our culture that enhance our humanity or humaneness that we should not lose to AI. Right? So, and this is very important because we will not have it through AI. Right? So Magnifica Humanitas again remind us that this relational tradition in diverse culture are essential for our flourishing. Right? Why? Because artificial intelligence is really treating learning as an isolated and transactional process, right? So again, and we have now the challenges where for learning of even students, right, using AI, right, and just taking from there, So how much students are losing, right, in the sense that they don't go through the process of reasoning themselves and get to the answer, right? After asking questions and wonder and to get to the truth, right? So it's a big loss, right? And so Pope Leo is saying this is a danger that we are going through, right? And we need to say it more clearly, right? He claimed, and I quote him again, even today, right? And it's the danger that is very colonial, right? Because it's following like the colonial framework where, things are just being given. I don't know if you have the experience of just checking the concept of indigenous or how AI will treat the concept of indigenous. It doesn't treat it the same way as many other Western, concepts that were more dominant, right? But because AI is not intentional, so it's just treating the data as the data are given to it. Yes, AI can very easily be colonial, right? And it's more likely further violate the right of vulnerable people in that sense, right? It will more likely violate the right of indigenous knowledge, right? And in that sense, a human flourishing. So, again, Pope Leo underlined that rethinking the role of teachers, the role of education, the organization of schools, and even how we evaluate, right, knowledge become very, very crucial nowadays. Why? Because we need to recover authenticity in education, right? Authenticity in education enhance human flourishing, right? An education that form, the whole person, the inner person, enhance human flourishing. And that education actually enable growth in virtue, right? And without virtue, as Thomas Aquinas would say, there is no human flourishing. So education must enable people to question, the unchecked power of technocracy, when that power works against our ability to fully express our wonder, right? and so fully realize our capacity as rational beings, right? And this is a moral responsibility. So to resist the power dynamic, and Pope Leo, again, draw on Laudato Si, who already said, talk about dominant technocratic paradigm, right? And he's saying artificial intelligence is bringing those too, right? And that we need to resist those, right? Because these dominant technocratic paradigm are enslaving people, right? Not allowing them full liberty to be what they are as made in the image of God. Right? So what I'm suggesting that one way really the church, we the church, could leverage artificial intelligence so that we preserve human flourishing is really by giving the people the possibility to wonder and to ask questions, to express their voice, right? As we have not done before, right? So we need to talk about what we can gain, what we are losing through AI as a human being, right? So it is time to make good use of the local means we have as churches, right? It's time to make good use of our culture, right? The culture that are still recognizing our relationality, so that we can still value and care about one another. We can still value and care about our emotions and how we can learn from them. We can still care and value about the vulnerable around us, Not our relationship are not with machine, right? But with other human beings. So we need to value and like revive the structure of brotherhood that we have. Right? So, and Pope Leo continue. Another aspect that is concerning is how our inner freedom is being affected, right? And when the human freedom is restricted, its human flourishing is restricted as well. He reminds us that to be aware of the digital platform that are designed to capture user time and attention, right? And again, if you allow me, I will share the digital platform and how they work. So you can see how Pope Leo is saying. So the digital platform that are designed to capture user time and attention, exploiting the vulnerability, right, and weakening the freedom, right. And this freedom, this inner freedom, really requires healthy attitude characterized by time of silence. So we need to grow in that sense, where you can go inside yourself, and introspection, right? And actually, discover, right, how God is speaking to you, and just discover, in conscience, what is meaningful, right? And throughout study, throughout reading, right, and then carefully, doing analysis. And so you have all the harm that digital platform can do to us, right? And the Pope Leo in Magnifica Humanitas already underlined all this, right? Competition, right? So see, you business user, the end user are all being affected, society, and the society, not only, society of the wealthy, even a society of a community who have already nothing that are being affected, right? So, and you have all these business practices, so enhancing exclusion, discrimination, censorship, exclusivity, price targeting, you have this algorithm that can go and become autonomous, right? And just decide, out of the way they have been trained, right? And they can do arm ranking, behavioral manipulation, right? where, sometimes it can be, a message that we come to you telling you, you are a disgrace, you are a disgrace, you are a disgrace, you are a disgrace, And in many ways, that goes to the mind of many young people, Pope Leo is saying, right? And that culminates into suicide, right? So data privacy violation, right? So, and then the type of harm, right? You see, restrict, bias, overcharge, intrude, addiction, mislead, abuses. So it's a lot, right? It's a lot, and we need to raise our consciousness about how all these digital platforms can actually affect our freedom. So that's very important. So, and then finally, Pope Leo is saying, another aspect, it's just the way workers are being affected, workers, right? Especially the vulnerable, right? Artificial intelligence is increasing the vulnerability of many workers, especially in developing countries, right? And Magnifica Humanitas recall the need to look beyond, right? GDP, right? For example, now it's about efficiency. So where are the human beings, right? So where are those human beings who can only work a certain way? And it's about how much GDP I can increase, right? And Magnifica Humanitas said we need to go beyond this, right? Like Pope Francis, and to care for our common home, right? And to break the chain on new form of slavery, right? Because there are new form of slavery through all these digital platforms. And he reminded us that why he named clearly that technology and artificial intelligence need to be disarmed, right? And he says it doesn't mean really denouncing it. It's not that technology, it's all bad altogether, but it's preventing it from dominating humanity, from enslaving humanity, from enslaving consciousness. And here I used to remember, an abolitionist, William the Garrison, who once said, enslave the liberty of one, but one single human being, and the liberties of the world are put in peril. Right? So this is serious, right? And the Pope Leo is saying, go beyond the human right, like individual rights, of that the right that I have right to technology, I have right to efficiency, I have right to this kind of development, so those rights are not absolute, right? Insofar as they can jeopardize the common good and the human person, the dignity of the human person. So to respond to these challenges of how the vulnerable workers are affected, Pope Leo XIV goes beyond, in ethics, the concept that we have defined as mutuality, right? And even the concept of reciprocity, right? And he even goes beyond the solidarity, even if these concepts are very, very important. But he goes beyond them in emphasizing what Gustavo Gutierrez has named alterity. And you have that in the paragraph that is talking about adopting the perspective of the victim. That is what alterity means, right? It's really inviting, to approach this question of artificial intelligence and its consequences of the human person from the perspective of the victim, right? Alterity helps us read reality from the social, the cultural, racial, and gender perspective of the victim. And this is Gustavo Gutierrez, the way he developed alterity in his new books, Vivir y Pensar, El Dios de los Pobres, right? So Gustavo Gutierrez just wrote that book before passing away, right? And this is the way he defined alterity, and Pope Leo is not necessarily using that concept but he's using the meaning of it, right? So the perspective of the victim, that entire, the social, cultural, racial, the intercultural, a dimension and component through which the victim are affected and even understand, right? So it is a demand to make space for the irreducible otherness of Christ, right? So it's seeing the others, right? And you see the others, right, as Christ. So the Christ in the others, right? Christ in the least of these, as the Gospel of Matthew tells us, right? So Christ is the otherness in all the victims, right? And that is what you have in that component of perspective of the victim, And it really reinforced Pope Leo call to salvaguard the dignity of right and right of workers and indigenous communities who are the most impoverished, right? And he says on paragraph 158, I quote, "The victim who pay the highest price, while the theories that promise automatic general prosperity, right, or the theory that promise growth in GDP, often prove to be illusory." End of quote. So protecting the right of workers become an ethical obligation, even more emphasized in the era of artificial intelligence. Because without work is being affected in a different way. So human flourishing is even more in danger. So Pope Leo calls, right, the irreplaceable social function of credit, right? And again, he says, because creating jobs and self-employed work, right, it's very important for human flourishing. Without work, human flourishing is jeopardized, right? And he calls us on, to refuse, right, finance for its own sake, right? Technology should serve human flourishing and human dignity, right? Finance should serve human dignity. Finance should create jobs. Finance should be for the sake of production, not just finance for finance. And should be at the service of the human person, right? And technology should not become a form of control over consciences. And Pope Leo denounces a technological development that represses human dignity and widens the gap between the rich and the poor, right? As artificial intelligence is really tending to do, right? And again, he says, if technology promises emancipation, yet produces new form of global subordination, then it stands in contradiction to the fundamental principle of human dignity, right? And it stands in contradiction to the basic condition for human flourishing. So as you can see, Pope Leo XIV reinforces Pope Francis' claim. If you remember Pope Francis' letter on the World Day of Peace in January 2024, he already said this, I quote, "Technological development that do not lead to an improvement in the quality of life of all humanity, but on the contrary, aggravate inequalities and conflict, can never count as true progress." End quote. So Magnifica Humanitas, it's really shedding light again through all this on the transnational actors and international forces at play that benefit from artificial intelligence to the detriment of the poor, right? That's why it's calling on the perspective of the victim, right? And here, I quote him again, Pope Leo XIV, on 173, he says, in some region of the world, especially in the global south, when you realize what is going on in the global south. Children and adolescents work in dangerous conditions, crushing the material from which rare earth elements are extracted. So the bodies of these people are scared, injured, and worn down so that computational flow may continue uninterruptedly, end quote. So Pope Leo is really reminding us, so all these form of, structural domination, again, through, right, artificial intelligence, so new form of domination through artificial intelligence, we will see that when we look at the suffering of the victim, right? So, and how many people are kept, right, to dependent. Yeah. So, and I will finish there. So Pope Leo put it like, nothing in artificial intelligence is immaterial or magical. So we need to remember that and go back to the consciousness and the way, we can wander as a human being, because that is the way we will flourish. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor, for unfolding to us what it means to be magnificently human. And you are truly put before us what it means to be magnificently human. You explained the embodied nature, the importance of relational nature of human being, which is truly founded on the Trinitarian love that is being received. And you went on to tell us like how we get that and basic conditions for human flourishing. You brought to our notice like improving capacity of the mind to know the truth which is relational, built on shared knowledge. Knowledge is not an individual position at all, it's collective imagination. And practically you brought out the whole concept of Ubuntu, which is a kind of a foundation philosophy for relational life, and how the inner freedom, the collective shared responsibility happens. And practically, you really, most of us are teachers and so on. So you also told us what it means to be rethinking the role of teacher in this world where the behavioral manipulation is taking place. And you beautifully put it like, without virtue, there is no human flourishing. I think that's the whole call of the encyclical, the whole aspect of ethics. And your call suggestion is well taken. Like, we, the church, could leverage, and I think a presence of human flourishing is to allow everyone to speak, ask questions, and use local means to do that. And thanks for your call to do that. And finally, you brought out how the vulnerability of all the workers, that is really at issue, and Pope calls for attention to the whole aspect of human dignity. And I think I would like to say the enslave of the liberty of one. If one is missing, I think liberty of all is at issue, which you beautifully said. So it goes, and another concept that you beautifully said, it goes beyond mere solidarity. So thank you so much for unfolding to us. So me, instead of summarizing, all have heard it. And I think we'll go ahead for some questions and your responses. We look forward to your responses. So I invite all of you to put on your videos so that we could see each other here itself. Though we are on web, we should look at each other. So that would be the first call of the Magnifica Humanitas. So thank you so much for putting on videos. I'd love to see your handsome and beautiful faces. So we will now open the floor for our question and answers. So this is a wonderful opportunity. So to engage directly with the professor, to seek clarity or deepen our understanding, to continue this rich conversation that we will have. So before we begin, just a few quick guidelines. So please keep your questions concise, focused, so we can accommodate as many voices, because we have only 15 minutes more, 10 to 15 minutes maximum. So if you if you are not able to say, just put the questions in the chat box. We will collect and I will read them for you. Or if you raise your hand, please raise your hand or use the raise hand feature and I will call on you. So that's how we proceed. So they're already in the chat box. I found 2 questions. So may I invite since there are only 2 there, so I start with them and then I will read them, or I will invite the person itself. Could unmute yourself and read the question. So the first question, I think that's from Professor Henry Almeida. Henry, would you like to ask, or shall I read
Yeah, I will ask. Am I audible?
Yes, very much. Go ahead.
Yeah, dear Professor, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. My question is, how do we integrate AI into human flourishing? Thank you.
Thank you, Henri. Yeah, so I think it's better to go back to our foundation, like theological foundation, right? So that's why I was going back to Thomas Aquinas, and the way Thomas Aquinas reminds us, that just the basic condition of human flourishing. What are the basic conditions of human flourishing? So then we have to make sure that AI is not restricting those conditions, right? Or train AI because it's trained, right? AI is not intentional. So the human being training it are intentional. So then we should make sure that the human being training AI are considering in the intentionality those conditions for human flourishing, right? Just preserving life, right? Because AI can preserve life, can also kill life, right? So preserving life, nurture life, not restricting knowledge, because that is what it tends to do, right? And that's why learner can become very important, because knowledge is not just taking data, right? So if you are just only taking data, that is not knowing, right? So knowing has those 4 operation: experiencing, understanding, judging, deciding, becoming responsible, right? That is what knowing is about. So and that, without that, human flourishing is not possible, right? And then just when you take justice, as Thomas Aquinas would say, without justice, society is dead, right? So how do we make AI enhance justice? And that will be the way we can actually, integrate AI into human flourishing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Nitin Montero? Nitin, are you there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Can you go ahead?
I think it was not more of a question, but it was more of a critique to the encyclical itself.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it is basically, you did touch it in your presentation, Professor Lushombo. Somehow the major way that this entire encyclical is framed is Babel versus, Jerusalem, the whole idea of that. So my whole question is, particularly with AI as a socio-technical system, it doesn't provide these dichotomies differently. We have.
We lost him.
Yeah. Nitin, we lost you. Hi, Nitin.
Yeah, so yeah, I think we lost him, but I think I got a little bit what he's trying to say.
Okay. Nitin,
apparently he's back.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
There's a problem with technology. We just had power cut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the idea is basically, do we have a choice between fragmentation and communion? Because these Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So these provide basically, together. Sorry, there is some issue here.
Mm.
Okay. Maybe
Yeah.
Hello.
I'll get back to you, or
Yeah.
Is it
But
clear now? I'm really sorry.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So how do we, address this issue of having fragmentation and communion together in these AI systems, particularly? So we need new vocabularies to deal with it, at least ex ante frameworks to deal with it, rather than after the fact regulations.
Okay.
Mm. Wow, so that's a good point. So, but I can only speak on the biblical imagery, for example, that Pope Leo is using, and maybe we should remember that what really we are doing here, that we had throughout the development of theology, we had these two perspectives on theological anthropology, and one tend to use like teleology, right? Which is much more okay. Let us remember our claim as a human being, which is the metaphysical claim, right? That is, we are imago Dei. We have a purpose in life, right? So we are, we are human beings. We flourish in love and in love of others and love of God, as Thomas Aquinas would say, that happiness is really union with God, right? So that a Christian belief, and which is very strong and which is very much teleological, right? It's a question, the claim of faith. So and then, Magnifica Humanitas want to have that present no matter what, right? And actually it's a foundation, is to say here there is something that still need to be preserved. So versus a mechanistic, right, approach where a human person can function efficiently. A human person become like intelligent because you can you can do many computational work, or a human person can gain more. We value efficiency, which is a very much a technical, mechanistic approach of also seeing the human person. So, and the encyclical is really trying to say, I mean, you still have to show that these two, right, don't really ensure human flourishing the same way. Because we Christian, we believe that without love, and love of God and love of one another, right, we don't get where we are supposed to get, right? And the Magnifica Humanitas says, I don't want to leave that language behind. And actually, we need to remind ourselves that this is a fact of life, right? So, and that we can experience it, because we do experience it. It's not just like a doctrine, right, of faith that you have to believe, but we actually experiencing. We can ask a question and we realize that that is the way we survive. We survive in community. We survive in loving each other. We survive in building together, right? So not in just starting with a big construction where not everyone, it says to be big, it says to be highest, like the Bible, right? But we survive in bringing, everyone a small stone, everyone its contribution, everyone a voice. That is the way we are sustainable, right? And that this is a matter of fact, because we have seen this in ecological crisis as well, So, and I think Magnifica Humanitas is really trying to underline that. Okay, thank you.
Poonam, unmute.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Keep it short and then.
Hi.
Poonam,
Hi,
good to
Leo.
see you.
Good to see you too. Leo, my question is concerning women. I guess you can see it on the screen. I'm just going to read it out.
Yes.
One cannot be truly reasonable and responsible without the capacity to know, understand, and exercise sound judgment. Theological formation plays a vital role in nurturing these capacities. Unfortunately, many women do not have access or take advantage of opportunities for theological formation, and their faith often remains primarily at the experiential level. How can the Church promote and encourage women's theological formation so that they are better equipped to engage critically, contribute meaningfully, and participate more fully in the life and mission of the Church?
Wow, that's a big question, Puna. Maybe you will even have a better answer than I could, right? So you see that to me, that's why what Gustavo Gutierrez is talking about in terms of alterity become very important, because we cannot just keep the same approaches, right? We cannot keep seeing things from the perspective of the dominant, from the, to use the church experience, from the perspective of the one who already has theology, I mean, the one who is already educated, the way the church is organized today, so the perspective is mainly from male, right? Because male are the one, who have the position of power, Now the church is trying to change, and including a few women here and there, right? But still we are not there yet, right? So we have the synodal church, we had the synodal approach, we just went through all that perspective. To me, that will be the first response, right? Trying to make synodality become reality. I think that will be the best way to start. And we know how synodality is very challenged, even at the very local level, again, because of the way or the structure are, because the synodality is not taking all the structure away, right? Which are very hierarchical. But the synodal message is there, right? So it's everyone has to take it from at the local level and even at the highest level. And to tell you my experience, when I was in Rome, I was just so surprised, to see how much synodal they can be, in the sense that we can sit on the table, right? On the table with cardinals, with the Pope, right? And they asking you, what do you think, right? And you can see that that effort it exists in the way they are including, women in dicasteries, and even if it's still, very little compared to the need. But when I experienced that, I just said to myself, I wish our local level could learn from this, right? And in the sense that bring women on the table, right? Let women have voice. That should be the starting point, which is very synodal approach to embrace. So how do we get to embrace the synodal approach that is already launched to all of us, right? So it's a really responsibility to everyone at the local level. I will really say, let us start from the local level, because more depend on our local, people, right? Like a local parish, local dioceses, all those spheres of our local structure. If we start there, because the church cannot be collapsed into, only the Pope. The church cannot be collapsed just into at the very highest level. The church is at all those different levels. And I think that is where we need to change too, And I will invite those who have power, to start, because they need to share power, in giving voice. And that's why I'm talking about giving a voice to the people, giving a voice to women, right?
Oh, thank you, Professor. We have 5 more minutes. we'll take. There's one more question from a student, asking for Magnifica Humanitas does not have concrete institutional recommendations compared to Rerum Novarum, defense of poverty, private property, workers' associations, just wages, critique of both capitalism and communism, etc. Thus, what social institutions, structures, and common agreements would you envision to make the concerns of Magnifica Humanitas concrete?
Wow. That's a really great question, but so first of all, remember that the church doesn't in the church teaching doesn't really tell you you have to be this, so you have to be Democrat, you have to be Republican, you have to be right. So the church teaching give us all those ethical principle, right? That we also call ethical coordinate, right? And those are the one which should make our social institutions, right? So what I would really say is let us start caring about implementing those ethical principles, right? Human dignity, subsidiarity, solidarity, common good, right? Care for our common home, the option for the poor, right? That is the way we will make a social institution that really respond to what Magnifica Humanitas is trying to do, right? So see the example of inviting Anthropic, right? Yeah. So it's just one example of how subsidiarity should work, how you can, every social institution need to become responsible, for the common good, for human dignity, and for care for the poor. Absolutely, right? And at every level, and it's not about just creating new institution. It's just like every single institution, including the AI institution, need to care about those ethical coordinates, right? And that is what we should do at every level, so that our social institution become more humane.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Professor. I think we'll go with the last question since it's already 10:15. We have gone 10 minutes ahead. So it's from, I think, the one Theresian. So Gorete Gonzalez has a question there. And our comment, yeah. Cultures, Gorete, if you could ask, yes. Or you want me to read? You can read for yourself. Yeah.
I can read it out, but I cannot put on my video because it has been disabled, I think, by the host. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, hi, Leo.
Hi, Gorete.
And myself. And the question that we have is, cultures perceive what is human differently. How would Magnifica Humanitas answer to this, as it is based on the Christian perspective of human dignity on the incarnation of Jesus Christ? You very well spoke about also Muktu, which is the African way of understanding. I am because I belong, and I participate because I share. So that is very much African. But in India, we have so many religions, so many cultures. So would you be able to put any light on that? Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you so much, Gorete. Yeah, and what I was saying, that the same culture, right, has equivalence in many other culture, equivalence in the sense that it's not framed, articulated the same way, but every single culture has a way of enhancing the human person, right? And that sometimes it can be, when we talk about enculturation, for example, in our country, right? So we try to weight our culture in light of the gospel, right? Because the gospel is totally common denominator telling us what to do, right? Because if we call ourselves Christian, normally we do have a light there, right? Because we have a master, we have a way of life. So we are follower of Christ. So in many ways, we have something that can remind us where we can come together like in common, you know, and allow differences to dialogue, right? So no matter how, you know, culture can be different, there is a way, you know, to value, to enhance culture. That I like to do research into cultural setting, and I found like Fiji has the same thing. You know, India has something similar, right? The Philippines has something similar, you know, and I'm sure it will be expressed differently, but the essence and the meaning is there. So then we could dialogue around that meaning, and counting on the fact that we are all have the same master, right? So we have resources to weten our culture, even the culture that need to be evangelized, right? Like need to take the step of Christ, because every single culture can have, you know, a good aspect, but also sometimes the humanizing aspect, right? But when we have those experiences, so we do have the gospel to witness that, right? And even those who do not have the gospel, as many are not even Christian in our communities, but you have Christian community working with these people, because those people have something in the one religion, right? That is affirming the human person as well, right? So there is a way to engage that dialogue in that sense, right? And again, synodality has reminded us that, you know, just go out and have a dialogue with the people, right? Have a dialogue. Who could tell that we could even have the dialogue with Anthropic, for example, right? Many Christians were very, very surprised at the beginning. So what is Anthropic doing in the presentation of the encyclical, right? And I remember one cardinal say, but the synodal table is not only for those who think the same way. We don't have to think the same way to engage the dialogue. We just need to wonder, right? So be open to wonder, at least open to ask questions, because if we are open to ask a question, then we can have a dialogue. But if we are already closed, that I'm the one who know, and my knowledge is higher than the knowledge of others, then that dialogue is not possible. Okay? And it was possible. I mean, I was so amazed because I had that experience, you know, and sitting with those, you know, company, you know, people from those company, I was amazed how much you can discover. Like, these are human beings too, right? And these are trying to do the right thing. So I cannot understand that if I don't even sit down with them, right? So no matter how different we are, right? And we end up, when we finish the dialogue, it doesn't mean that we all collapse in one thing. You know, everyone, we still have the differences, but we are able to bring the differences together into dialogue. That alone, right? It's our call, our Christian call. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it's already 10:20, so we are beyond time. But thanks to Professor, because for her it is already night 8:30. It's almost 10.
Yes.
So,
it's 10 almost.
If you are sitting there, I think we have the energy to sit too. It's in the morning.
Yeah.
So we draw the session to a close. I want to thank you once again, distinguished resource person, Professor, for your time especially, and for agreeing. You have a lot to catch up, as you said. After being there on the panel, you have a lot to catch, but still you agreed to be with us. And thanks for your generosity and your time and sharing with us your insights, your maybe your radical, let's say, very thought-provoking insights to us. Thank you so much. So thank you so much. And also I would like to thank my gratitude goes to the President, Theologian, for making this possible, for his presence and his welcoming words, and beautifully set the tone for our time together. And of course, without all of you, dear participants, without you, I think it would not happen. Thank you for showing up I think that itself shows that you want to voice up and speak about and really try to be truly human at this time of AI. I think thank you so much for listening deeply and for being part of this conversation that truly matters today. And we hope, and I also would like to thank the students who have helped me to like IDO Clement, who designed all things, and Scholastic Joshua, who has been gathering your chats, and Jasmine, who has been admitting you to the admitting room, and for their help, and all my dear friends who have read through the scripts and I mean kind of kept in reminding me what to do and so on. Thanks to all my friends too. So thank you so much, and let's make the humanity magnificent in the age of AI by being truly human and truly relational. So thank you so much, and have a relaxed weekend. Maybe you can. So Theresians are here. You can keep it open if you want to say hello to Lushombo. And thank you so much, and have a good weekend.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity to say hello to you, Goretti. So good to see you.
Many of us are here.
Oh my, seriously, my God. I wish I could visit India one day.
Very
Hi.
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 Yeah, thanks so much for showing. I'm so glad.
Nice to see you and to
Others
hear
can
from
leave.
you.
Others
Yeah.
can feel free to leave, and thank you so much.
Very, you are muted.
Leo.
Yeah.
Hi,
And
hi, Leo. Once again.
Hi, Leo. Leo, very in
Pune,
here.
where are you? Oh my
I'm in the very institution,
You are
the very place to which you are talking to.
Oh yes,
Pune.
I see.
Yes.
Yes.
It's so nice to see you.
Yes, nice to see you too.
Very
Very.
Yes,
Oh my
Leo. I'm also in
goodness.
Pune. I'm also in Pune.
You're also in Pune.
Yes.
Oh my God, so great to see you. You know, so we were with Verin, we were together at Santa Maria.
Yeah, of course, you're co-promos. I'm very proud of you and very happy to see you.
And so proud of you too, you know, proud of all of you. I really felt it